hole by hole. We're killing every step of the way. What the NVA are holding tight, and they're making us pay for every foot of ground we took. About that time, they launched the second counterattack of the afternoon. You couldn't see it at first, but you could hear it, and you could sure feel it. And incoming fire just went up a giant step, like somebody turned up the volume. Small arms fire was just shredding everything above ground. Leaves and twigs and branches are coming down, banana trees getting knocked over. There was an NVA gunner out in front of me shooting at this wall of a masonry hut right over my head and just chopping it down like a chainsaw. Bullets snapping, cracking by. Now and then make that spat sound when they hit meat. Somebody'd yelp. Rockets and RPGs flying, whiz, bang, flash, bang. Grenades going in and out fast as people could throw them. The M26s and Chi-Coms passing each other in the air. It was a fight. It was a fight. And the enemy, they weren't down and defending anymore. Man, they were up and coming on. 3s and 4s and 6s and 8s popping out of the brush. All cammied up, leaves in the helmets. Weapon held out in front. Little spiked bayonet shining. Coming at a trot. Give them credit. They were soldiers. That's for sure. But also at that time, these beat up, bloodied, bone-tired, raggedy-ass teenagers turned Marine. They stepped up and they saved it. Turned it around. Because they got up with everything that was still shooting. M16s and M60s, and captured AKs and RPDs and bayonets and bare hands, and they reached out and laid into these little rascals who was attacking us. And they stopped them cold right there. 4th Marines and the 320th NVA toe-to-toe.
At this point, Lieutenant Prescott became a casualty due to heavy enemy fire. And Lieutenant Vic Taylor took over the command of Hotel Company. And he and Livingston together pushed further north into Dinto, where, once again, they were stopped by extremely heavy fire from enemy in concealed bunkers, trench lines, and other fortified positions. I ordered the two companies to move back, execute a fighting withdrawal, come back into Dido, and set up a perimeter of defense there for consolidation. But first, they had to stop the counterattack by the enemy. With skillful use of supporting arms and by tremendous action of the individual Marines, they were able to keep the enemy from overrunning their position. And they slowly worked their way back into Dido, where they reorganized. Now, during this action, Jim Livingston, who was badly wounded and unable to move, ordered his company to withdraw while he attempted to put covering fire on the enemy running towards them. But they refused to leave their gallant leader, and they wouldn't come back without him. And 4 of his Marines dragged him back to the rear area. Both companies successfully withdrew back to Dido, where they formed their perimeter and linked up with our other forces. Shortly after this, while reorganizing at Dido, we noticed out into the open areas north and east of Dido large numbers of enemy troops moving into the area from the various villages to our north. These could be seen clearly by our aerial observers and by the pilots in the helicopters and aircraft that were supporting us with their fire during this phase of our operation. And they were able to eliminate a large number of enemy coming in from that direction. The pilots were so excited at seeing so many enemy in the open, they actually fought with each other on who was going to get the next chance to come in and strafe or napalm the enemy out in the open. They did a tremendous job.
if I recall correctly, we had some Air Force, Navy, and Marine at the same time. And I recall probably the most accurate of all of them were the Marine A4s, the little scooters. We probably put about, I'm going to say maybe 100 over 100 bombs. Usually most of them are Mark 82 500-pound bombs on Dido. So a lot of snake eyes, which have the retarded fins, which slow the bomb down so that the shrapnel doesn't take out the aircraft as they explode. And that's probably the most accurate of the weaponry that was used. They also did use some 20 millimeter guns, and there was also some Zuni rockets, the 5-inch rocket.
Colonel Hull, my regimental commander, joined me at Dido at that point and told me we had to continue the pressure on the enemy, that we could not let them regroup for another major assault. At that point, I told him, Colonel, we're out of steam. My companies are exhausted. We've been fighting for almost 3 days, and we had some pretty heavy contact prior to that. We're physically unable to go forward with the resources we have against the opposition. There's a hell of a lot of enemy in that area. They're well fortified. They have tremendous support from their supporting arms in the DMZ, rockets, artillery, and mortars. And we just didn't have the strength to do what you're asking us to do. He then told me that he had arranged to have a mechanized battalion from the 2nd Arvin Regiment assist us in this attack. In effect, we could attack jointly north. Now, this Arvin battalion had both M48 tanks and armored personnel carriers, and they were equipped with 90 millimeter cannon and 50 caliber machine guns. The idea was to launch a combined attack with 2-4, my battalion, on the right of the stream that ran roughly north and south, and the Arvin mechanized battalion on the left. Now, since they were in vehicles, they could move more quickly than we could, and also they would be protected from shrapnel and enemy small arms fire. And by coordination over the radio with the U.S. Army advisor to that battalion, what we had hoped to do was to have that Arvin battalion move forward, and as they moved, put flanking fire in front of the advancing troops from my battalion who were on foot. The idea being, with that flanking 90 millimeter and 50 caliber fire, could either pin the enemy down till my troops could clear them out of the bunkers, or in fact blow them out of the bunkers, particularly with those 90 millimeter cannons on the tanks. So we moved forward about 1500, 3 p.m. that afternoon. I used 2 of my companies, with Golf Company in the lead, followed by Foxtrot Company. Foxtrot Company was, in numbers, the strongest company I had. Golf Company was down to about 40 effectives, including its officers. They moved forward with Foxtrot close behind. The plan was, once Golf Company, if they ran into something they couldn't handle or the going became too tough, we'd move Foxtrot Company up to reinforce until the Arvin were able to put enough fire on them from the flank and with our supporting arms drive the enemy from the positions in front of them so that we could continue the attack with both companies. This was our plan. We moved forward in that formation out of Dinto north into Thuongdo. And as we moved further north through Thuongdo, the fire to our front became heavier and heavier. Then about 5 p.m., we're about halfway through Thuongdo when we started receiving heavy fire from our left flank, as well as heavier fire from the front. At first, I thought the fire from our left flank was misdirected fire from our friendly Arvin battalion. But then when I put my binoculars over there and spied the enemy troops, we saw that they were clearly North Vietnamese Army troops.